Hello, my name is Day Moreno, and I will be talking about an analysis of ethical values in the human genetic engineering. Here's what's up. In China, there were a group of scientists that worked on changing the human genome in a human embryo. Yes, human, obviously. And this has caused, since it became a thing, some an ethical revolution in the world, in the science world per se, more specifically, because some scientists think that it should be done and others don't because of ethical problems, as in whether, where, how, with what technology or equipment. And since then, everyone's having like a debate, and for the time being, in human genetic engineering isn't with us, but well, maybe in some point, um, it can be done through time, when the persons understand better the genetics and write it, because in 2013 they they published a lot of publications of genetics in torn and of this subject in genetics, like the human genome alteration and manipulation. But um, they have increased since 2013. In 2014, they began writing about it because of this experiment that they did. And well, since then, I mean, we even can compare it with in vitro fertilization. Let's take that for example. If we compare it with human genetic engineering, we can compare it like a decade ago. A decade ago, in vitro fertilization was considered as a genetic alteration. But when you see it now, we don't see it as a genetic alteration, we see it as a normal thing. And why is that? Is because when an experiment is done for the first time, it's like a big boom to the through the mind of the human, because it's like, oh no, that is too much. We can stop. Don't do it, etc. But other person are like, do it, do it, do it. And the persons that are like wanting and willing to do these kinds of experiments are putting at risk, like the experiments and the species of humanity. But when they do it and they don't have fatal consequences, like fatal ones, they see it like, oh, it's safely done. It hasn't like have a a big consequence. It nothing happens to the embryo, nothing happens to the woman, so it's okay, go ahead, don't mind me. And everyone like thinks about it, and through time it comes normalized. And think about that and compare it to human genetic engineering. In the present, as in 2015, everyone thinks that taking the genome of the human and changing it and alter it, we are doing this procedure, this technique, and changing the nature of the body that is considered as a big thing. But think of it in 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 the point of view of the future. Maybe the persons that are willing to do it, and then will come a way, if it can be possible to do it safely, and and be accurate. And then through time, another decade more, it will be done like as the regular. And so the question that I kept formulating on myself was, how do the interests of the intellectual community influence the ethical procedures and standards that are defining human genetic engineering policy and regulation? Well, first of all, to engage with this problem, I have to look at it this way to engage with my project per se. I need to find persons, but not any persons. I needed to find the intellectual community. So I needed to know who were the forefront geneticists that are coming up with this new knowledge for us. And so I kept on studying about them and came across with Jennifer Doudna, along with Emmanuel Charpentier. And when I kept on studying about them, the both of them have been studying and they discovered the CRISPR technique. And it's an acronym, it's a long acronym actually, that it means clustered, regularly, interspaced, short palindromic repeats. And yes, it's very long, but it's shortened by CRISPR, and this technique helps to cut and paste the gene and correcting it. With this technique, we can design any genome as we ever wanted it to. Think of it as designing a human. Wouldn't you think that a person doesn't want his or her baby to have brown eyes? Maybe the mother wants it to have blue eyes. So then he would go to the clinic, do the CRISPR technique and procedure, which is a very highly dangerous one, and just do it. And the baby will, if it's done safely and it's accurate by the time, then it would have the blue eyes. And then it wouldn't stop there. It would be coaches that will want their athletes to have greater resistance, better bones, resistance to cardiovascular diseases, and do all these kinds of stuff. Robots, if you will, I don't know, like robot humans. And I don't know, this has caused a lot of controversy because the question about all of us is, where do we stop? Do we stop at diseases? Do we stop at just facial or phenotypes? Just at that, And so I needed to gather data about all about her, about Emmanuel Charpentier, and with another one that I came across later on, that was Feng Zheng. Now Feng Zheng had a dispute with Jennifer Doudna that I talked about earlier, that discovered the CRISPR technique, and they had a dispute patent, and it's because like they both wanted the CRISPR technique acknowledged to them, but the one that like won all the fame and the patent was Jennifer Doudna. And because of the fame, she even won it with Emmanuel Charpentier, the 2015 Breakthrough Prize of Life in Science award, because of their revolutionary work. And that has been like a milestone since they won it, because like everyone knew about them. Cameron Diaz was there too, and well, it was just very exciting when they won it. But anyways, The other thing that I needed to do was to gather triangulate the data, which I haven't mentioned. The data that I chose um, was lectures, publications, and interviews. And why I chose this is because they needed to have, as they needed to have triangulation, they needed to relate one with the other. So, like, I will talk more about it in as I go on explaining my project to let you know. And yes, um, with the codification process, I needed a software, and I used CAT. And yes, like the animal cat. It's another acronym, but this time it's shorter as the CRISPR one, and it stands for Codification Analysis Toolkit. And this doesn't do the work for me, but it definitely helps me to break the information and understand it and code it with these codes. Their names are trust, fairness, caring, respect, responsible, and caring. These 6 codes, notice that they're all positive words, right? And these are ethical values, by the way, and principles. Um, I did not code them by positive. I explain. If I were to codify, let's use a hypothetical example, this information. The CRISPR technique is a very unstable procedure to go on. Well, I could code it as trust because it's saying that it isn't reliable to work with, therefore there isn't trust. And so it will be classified as a negative trust, but in my code, I would just put in trust. That way I did it with the 6 codes. It could be negative trust, positive trust, or even both. Or some of the information that only just tells it none. So yeah, that way I can, since I coded the three data, which were video, publication, and interviews, those 3 had to do with what they're saying, with their knowledge, their understandings, and so they could triangulate. Everything relates with everything. Everything relates to everything, yeah. And well, my findings about all of this needs to clarify my research question. So when we see the percentages on my poster, we can even look, and let's take for example Duna and Seng. Maybe Duna has the highest mark on the percentages in trust, and the lowest mark that had on trust was Seng. But Seng had the highest mark on caring. Aha! So we can analyze it like us, not on the, it's not shown on the project, but we can even understand the person better, because when we see that Dutna talks more about trust than Seng, we can say that Dutna is talking more about the liability of her procedure and or technique. But Seng doesn't talk about it isn't that concerned with the trust issue. He's more concerned about the fairness. So when we talk about fairness, we're talking about if there were who would get the privilege to do this. Maybe he's more concerned about that. Like, who will have the privilege to do this? Maybe everyone, not everyone. Maybe he talks more about that stuff. And we're not saying that we cannot say that Seng doesn't care about it. But he talks more about the fairness because he understands that that's the biggest value in ethics to to underlie. And by that, we can understand more this scientist in a better way. And therefore, we can move on to what I want to do next, and that will be transitioning my qualitative methodology, which was the one that my poster has, and transitioning it to a more quantitative one. This has to do more about field work, going out there more, doing data sets that has to do with personal questions from me to the scientist, and asking them some critical questions so I can have a more in-depth a more in-depth results. And so that is my explanation of my poster. Any questions?